Hey everybody. Today I'm bringing you something slightly different. It's still going to be reviews. It's going to be a review of a short and review of a full-length documentary movie, but they're both from the South by Southwest Festival collection. So what that means is South by Southwest, as everyone knows, is a music festival, but it's also a movie festival as well. And it's in Austin, Texas every year, but this year it was canceled due to the whole COVID and sheltering at home and all that kind of stuff. It basically went down like a lot of things did and was unable to actually occur. So what they've done is they've curated a selection of movies and shorts and put them on Amazon Prime. If you hold an account there, you can go watch these for free until May 6th. And I don't know if these selections are going to change. It's only been up for 2 days. So I would say, check back every couple of days. But there's quite a bit there to go check out now. A lot of shorts and also a few feature-length movies as well. So, and like a festival, when you go and click on one of these links, it'll have some sort of an introduction. At least the two I've seen so far do, and I'm assuming they all do. Have an introduction either by a filmmaker that's involved in it, possibly someone who's in it, or possibly someone with the South by Southwest Festival kind of introducing it, giving you a little information about it. They also mentioned in the beginning of the documentary one that I watched that there might be some Q&A kind of stuff too, which is also really common for festivals, that after the movies, you can talk to the director or some of the actors or some of the people involved and get a little more insight into the film itself. So I think that might be available on there as well. I haven't dug too deeply yet. So I'm going to go into the short first because that was my favorite of the two, and then I'll go into the feature-length documentary. The short is a 2019 documentary short called Dieorama, but it's spelled wrong with the beginning being D-I-E. It's by a filmmaker that I don't know named Kevin Stake or Stake, S-T-A-A-K-E. It is about a woman who works in the DA's office in Bellingham, Washington. Now, what makes it special is that she has a hobby of making miniatures. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to say this had a special interest to me because I did used to live in Bellingham, Washington. I also went to school there, so a lot of the locations you see there kind of bring me back and give me a little extra level of connectedness to this story. In fact, there's a scene towards the end where you're going to see this large wooden tower on top of a hill, and that is behind Western Washington University, and that tower is on top of a place called Seaholm Hill. Very common for students and other people to walk up there. It's open to the public. You walk up this kind of wooded hill, and when you get to the top, there's that wooden tower. You can go up to the top of it. It's kind of a lookout. It shows that in this movie here. Anyway, she, as her hobby, makes ultra miniature dioramas of crime scenes. And at one point, they give you a really good idea of the scale. And once again, I don't know miniature scales. I'm sure there's different scales that are kind of standard. It seems like this is a standard one, and it's something like 1 to 100 and something. At one point, another member of law enforcement there, they all kind of know about this, about her. He holds up a gun, full-size, assault rifle type of gun, and then they show her version of it, the miniature version of it that's in her diorama, and he puts it on the tip of his finger, and they focus in on it and show you how small it is. So when you see all these dioramas at first, you can't quite tell how small they really are, but they're really tiny. A lot of them are. What they are is that what makes them actually interesting more than just crime scenes. They don't seem to be actual literal recreations of specific crime scenes, although there might be a few in there. It wasn't very specific about that. They seem to be more representations of kind of different types of crime scenes that you might occur. And there's an element of really dark humor and weird whimsy in there, which makes them really interesting. Some of them will have stuff where you go under the ground and you can see what's happening underneath. A lot of them are domestic scenes. But there's an element of artistry to it that really makes them pop and makes them intriguing. And when you look at them, they have an element of horror to them, but they also have an element of mystery to them where you're like, what happened here? There's a husband and a wife and another guy and someone's beheaded, or, it's crazy, weird stuff like that. And there's a definite level of artistry to them, make them really, really fascinating and cool to look at. So I would highly recommend going and checking out Dieorama. It's only about 10 minutes long. I mean, you really can't go wrong checking this one out. That was my favorite of the two things I've seen so far, but I'm sure as I just bring some other movies to you, I'll have a few more come off of this list. The next one up is TFW, No GF. Now, I know that's a lot of letters, random letters, but if you're internet savvy, you would recognize that. I did not recognize this. I'm relatively internet savvy, I guess, but I'm also, 55 years old, so I am not the target audience for that acronym. Anyway, according to the film and according to what they show you, this stands for that feeling when no girlfriend, or that feeling when you have no girlfriend, or that feeling you get when you have no girlfriend. It's basically a version of that. And as you might guess, it goes into the subculture that started to get a little bit of notoriety in the news in the last few years. Has to do with kind of this incel subculture, this involuntarily celibate, all this kind of weird stuff. There's been also connections to shooters and to racist groups and to all kinds of weird subcultures. So the good part of this movie is it really dives into some of these people that are in this, especially identifying them with these various sub-menus inside of 4chan and kind of what that whole culture is about. But it's very highly troll-oriented in a lot of ways. Once again, that whole part of it is very interesting because if you're not really in that culture, it's going to be something that'll allow you to have an insight into it and get a little bit of an idea of kind of the terminology, what it's all about, where these people are coming from. And it follows several different people. One's from the Seattle area, once again, an area I used to live in. There's these two brothers from that area. There's also a guy down in Texas. There's a guy in New York. There's a guy in California. I think that might be all the ones that we follow. I would say for me it's about a 3 to 3.5 star movie. That one I previously mentioned, I would say it's probably about a 4 star for me. This is probably more like around a 3 star. Mostly because it's got great potential. It's got really interesting, unique subject matter, even though it's kind of heavy. And showing you stuff you may not be aware of. And that's always a hallmark of a good documentary. The drawback is it doesn't really go very much anywhere. Now, you can't assume that a documentary is going to take you somewhere necessarily. It's not going to necessarily have a story arc unless you go into something where there's already a full event has occurred. But this is a documentary that would really be served well by a long-term look at these guys. I mean, it sounds like from watching it that they were with them maybe, or they went back to them at some point. There's definitely a mention of that. So maybe it took place over a year or so, or 6 months. It's kind of hard to tell. They didn't tell you exactly. But there are some events that occur that allow you to know that some time has passed. But for me, the documentary that would be really interesting is take what you've got here, maybe edit it down to about half the amount of time, maybe about 45 minutes of this. This is only about an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 25, something like that. It's not too long. Take about all of this and condense it down, like I said, into about 45 minutes, and then come back to these guys in like 10 years or 20 years and see what's become of them. Did any of them go to violence? Did any of them just become regular old working business guys with families? Did any of them fall off the deep end and become homeless people? I mean, I'm assuming there would be a really interesting level of stories for all these characters if you kind of went back to them in kind of a 7-Up sort of a way. Anyway, that being said, there is definitely some interesting stuff to be found here. It's very heavy and it's pretty bleak. And it does at points you feel like you're starting to have a level of sympathy for these guys. They do humanize them quite a bit, and you understand, kind of what has led them to be where they're at. But every time you get to that point, one of them will do something that's incredibly harsh, misogynistic, and they just play it off kind of with a laugh. And that's that kind of horrible thing you get with these guys, with that troll mentality, where it's like there's always a level of laughing at other people's misfortune. And the idea is that, well, my life is terrible, so I'm going to just, all I can do is enjoy other people's misfortune. And there's a big level of that in here. And that will hold you at a distance. Will hold most people at a distance, I would think. It does for me. All that being said, of the two, I would go for Dieorama, and I will see you guys soon.